The evening at Las Cascadas was meant to be flawless. Known for its luxurious decor and exceptional service, the restaurant seemed like the perfect choice for Jack and Rachel's anniversary celebration. Warm light from grand chandeliers filled the room, and the soft murmur of conversations mixed with the gentle clinking of glasses created an atmosphere of elegance. Jack, sitting across from Rachel, raised his glass with a mysterious gleam in his eye. "To us," he said, his voice smooth, almost too smooth. Rachel forced a smile, raising her glass in return, but her heart was heavy with an unease she couldn't shake. "To us," she echoed, though her voice betrayed a lack of conviction. She glanced around the room, the ornate surroundings and impeccably dressed guests only amplifying her apprehension. Her gaze returned to Jack, who looked completely at ease, as though nothing could disturb his calm. "You look beautiful tonight," Jack said, his tone feeling rehearsed. Rachel's heart thudded, her smile faltering. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. She prodded at her meal, the exquisite flavors dull and lifeless on her tongue. "Is something wrong with the food?" Jack asked, a note of impatience creeping into his tone. "No, it's not that," Rachel replied, shaking her head slightly. "I just don't feel well. Maybe I need some fresh air." Jack's smile was cool, not quite reaching his eyes. "You're always worrying about something," he said, his tone almost dismissive. "Just relax and enjoy the night." He reached across the table, his hand cold and firm as it grasped hers. A shiver ran down Rachel's spine. "I think I need to use the restroom," Rachel said, her voice tight. She rose from her seat, but the room spun around her. Before she could take another step, her legs buckled, and she collapsed to the floor, gasping for breath. "Rachel!" Jack's voice cut through the haze, sharp and urgent. Faces blurred around her as the other diners turned to watch. Rachel's breath came in shallow, ragged gasps as she clutched at her throat. I can't breathe," she managed to choke out, panic rising in her chest. The world around her grew darker as the sound of hurried footsteps and murmured voices filled the room. A waiter crouched beside her. "Ma'am, can you hear me? Someone call an ambulance?" Jack knelt by her side, his face painted with concern. "Stay with me, Rachel. Help is coming," he said, but his words felt distant, almost hollow. Rachel's vision blurred as her world narrowed to the pain in her chest and the desperate struggle to draw breath. In the midst of the chaos, Phoebe, a cleaner at the restaurant, watched intently. She had witnessed enough medical emergencies in her life to recognize that time was slipping away. Her knowledge of first aid and medical crises told her Rachel needed urgent help. As paramedics arrived and began working, Phoebe stepped closer, her gaze fixed on Rachel. Rachel's breathing was shallow, her lips taking on a bluish tint. Summoning her courage, Phoebe spoke up, her voice steady despite the turmoil. "You need to intubate her now, or she won't make it." One of the paramedics glanced up at Phoebe, startled. "Who are you?" "I'm Phoebe, a cleaner here, but I've seen this before. If you don't act now, she's going to die," Phoebe said firmly. The paramedic hesitated, exchanging nervous glances with his colleagues. "We can't just..." "Listen to me," Phoebe interrupted, her tone commanding. "She needs a tracheotomy now or she'll suffocate. You're running out of time." The urgency in her voice seemed to jolt the paramedics into action. They stepped back, allowing Phoebe to take charge. With steady hands, she grabbed a scalpel from the paramedic's kit. Despite the chaos, she exuded a calm resolve. Jack, still kneeling beside Rachel, watched Phoebe with a mix of suspicion and desperate hope. "What are you doing?" he demanded, his voice laced with doubt. "Saving her life," Phoebe replied without hesitation, her focus unwavering as she worked. Phoebe knelt beside Rachel, her hands steady as she made a precise incision in Rachel's throat. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. Carefully, she inserted a small tube, allowing air to flow into Rachel's lungs. The silence was shattered by a sharp, desperate gasp. Rachel's body jerked, then relaxed slightly as her breathing stabilized. The paramedics, shaken out of their initial hesitation, sprang into action. The lead paramedic, clearly impressed by Phoebe's quick intervention, took over with renewed urgency. "Let's get her to the hospital," he ordered, his tone carrying newfound respect for the woman who had just saved Rachel's life. As Rachel was loaded onto a stretcher, Jack's mask of composure began to slip. He turned to Phoebe, his voice low and controlled. "How did you know what to do?" Phoebe met his questioning gaze without flinching. "I've seen it before," she replied firmly. "Now get out of their way so they can save her." Jack's jaw tightened, but he stepped aside, allowing the paramedics to wheel Rachel out to the waiting ambulance. Phoebe followed close behind, her silent presence offering reassurance. Inside the ambulance, the paramedics worked tirelessly, the hum of their professionalism contrasting with the earlier chaos. Rachel's breathing remained labored, but the tube Phoebe had inserted was keeping her airway open. Jack sat beside Rachel, gripping her hand tightly. "Hang in there," he murmured, his voice strained. "You're going to be fine." From her seat across the ambulance, Phoebe watched Jack intently. Something about his concern didn't sit right with her. There was an odd hollowness in his tone, a subtle undercurrent that made her uneasy. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this situation than met the eye. At the hospital, the emergency team was ready and waiting. Rachel was quickly whisked away for further treatment, leaving Jack and Phoebe in the sterile waiting area. Jack paced back and forth, his anxiety palpable. Phoebe, on the other hand, sat quietly, her thoughts swirling with possibilities. After a long silence, Jack turned to Phoebe, his gaze sharp and questioning. "Who are you really? How did you know what to do back there?" Phoebe's expression remained calm. "I told you, I've seen it before. I did what needed to be done." Jack's eyes narrowed. "I don't trust you. There's something you're not telling me." Phoebe held his gaze, her voice unwavering. "Maybe there is. But right now, your wife's life is more important than your suspicions. Focus on that." Their tense exchange was interrupted by the arrival of a doctor from the treatment room. "She's stable for now," the doctor announced, his tone cautious. "But we need to keep her under observation. It's too soon to say she's out of danger." Jack nodded, his face a mixture of relief and worry. "Thank you, doctor." As the doctor walked away, Jack turned back to Phoebe. "This isn't over." Phoebe met his gaze with quiet determination. "No, it isn't." The waiting area fell into silence once more, the tension between them almost tangible. Both of them knew this was only the beginning, and that whatever lay ahead would be far from easy. The bright fluorescent lights of the hospital hallway cast a harsh glow on their strained faces. Phoebe sat in a small, cold waiting room, the weight of the night pressing heavily on her shoulders. Across from her, Jack paced like a restless animal, his face a storm of barely controlled fury. The door to the emergency room swung open, and the hospital director, Dr. Alvarez, stepped into the hallway. His sharp gaze fell on Phoebe, disapproval etched into his expression. "Phoebe, a word," he said curtly, motioning for her to follow. Phoebe stood, her heart pounding but her face resolute. She followed Dr. Alvarez down the corridor, aware of the curious stares and hushed whispers of nurses and doctors. They entered a small office, and the door closed behind them with a definitive click. Dr. Alvarez wasted no time. "Phoebe, what were you thinking?" he demanded, his voice tinged with both frustration and disbelief. "You left this hospital as a doctor and took a job as a cleaner." Dr. Alvarez leaned back, his tone sharp. "You left this hospital as a doctor and took a job as a cleaner. Why didn't you just keep your head down and stay out of things that don't concern you?" Phoebe met his gaze firmly. "Dr. Alvarez, Rachel was dying. I did what I had to do to save her life. The paramedics were too slow, and she needed immediate help." He sighed heavily, rubbing his temples. "You acted recklessly. You're not a medical professional anymore, Phoebe. You know the risks of overstepping your role. What you did could have had serious consequences." "But it didn't," Phoebe replied, her voice resolute. "She's alive because I intervened. You know as well as I do that without immediate action, she wouldn't have made it." Dr. Alvarez's expression hardened. "That's not the point. You had no authority to intervene. You acted outside the boundaries of your role." Phoebe felt a wave of frustration but refused to back down. "I understand the rules, but sometimes rules have to be bent to save a life. I couldn't just stand by and do nothing." The director shook his head, his voice cold. "This isn't about helping. It's about following protocols and ensuring patient safety. You crossed a line, Phoebe, and there are consequences." Back at Las Cascadas, Jack stood near the entrance, his impatience visible in every stiff movement. When Phoebe approached, he crossed his arms, his eyes narrowing. "They fired me," Phoebe said flatly, her tone revealing no emotion. Jack's lip curled in disdain. "Good. You had no business interfering in the first place. You were reckless and put my wife in danger." Phoebe's eyes flashed with anger. "I saved her life, Jack. If you can't see that, then you're more blind than I thought." He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a low, menacing tone. "You think you're some kind of hero? You're nothing more than a meddling busybody who doesn't belong here." "Maybe I don't belong here," Phoebe shot back, her voice steady. "But I belong wherever I can make a difference. And right now, that's not with you." Without another word, Phoebe turned and walked away, the weight of the evening pressing heavily on her shoulders. She made her way back to her modest apartment on the outskirts of the city. The silence inside was deafening as she replayed the night's events in her mind. She sat at her kitchen table, the dim glow of a single lamp casting long shadows. Despite the frustration and injustice, she felt a flicker of resolve. She had done what was right, and no criticism or loss of a job could take that away. The next morning, Phoebe woke with a new determination. She couldn't shake the memory of something she'd seen the night before, Jack slipping something into Rachel's drink. She needed answers. Phoebe headed to the hospital, determined to speak to Rachel. She quickly found Rachel's room. Inside, Rachel looked pale but alert. Relief washed over Rachel's face when she saw Phoebe. "Phoebe," Rachel said weakly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you for everything." Phoebe nodded and pulled a chair close to Rachel's bed. "I did what I had to," Phoebe said. Then her tone grew serious. "But, Rachel, there's something you need to know." Rachel's brow furrowed. "What is it?" Phoebe hesitated, then took a deep breath. "While I was at the restaurant, I saw Jack put something in your drink. I think he poisoned you." Rachel's eyes widened in shock and confusion. "Poison? Why would he do that?" "I don't know," Phoebe admitted. "But I'm going to find out." Phoebe admitted. "I don't know, but we need to find out. I think we should involve the police." Rachel hesitated, her mind racing with conflicting emotions. Finally, she nodded. "You're right. We need to know the truth." Phoebe nodded back. "I'll contact the police, but I'll need your support. Are you ready for this?" Rachel closed her eyes, taking a deep breath before responding. "Yes. Let's do it." With Rachel's consent, Phoebe contacted the authorities and explained her suspicions. The officers took her statement seriously and assured her they would investigate further. Later that day, they arrived at the hospital to speak with Rachel, who corroborated Phoebe's account. Acting swiftly, the police apprehended Jack by the afternoon. He maintained an air of arrogance, loudly protesting his innocence as they led him away, but the evidence against him was mounting. As Rachel continued her recovery, Phoebe dug deeper into Jack's background. She spent hours poring over financial statements and phone logs, determined to uncover the truth. What she discovered was shocking. Jack had been making multiple suspicious transactions to an unknown account. Each new piece of evidence pointed to something darker and more calculated. Phoebe's curiosity turned into determination as she pieced together the puzzle. She couldn't ignore the sense that there was far more to this story than anyone realized. One afternoon, as she sat at her kitchen table surrounded by a pile of documents, her phone buzzed with a message from Rachel. "Come over, we need to talk." Phoebe arrived at Rachel's home to find her friend looking visibly shaken. Concern etched across Phoebe's face. She asked, "What's wrong?" Rachel handed her a folder, her expression tense. "I found these among Jack's things, phone records. Look at the dates and times." Flipping through the records, Phoebe's eyes narrowed as a familiar pattern emerged. "He's been calling the same number repeatedly," she murmured. "This isn't just about money. There's something much bigger going on." Rachel nodded, her voice steady despite the weight of her words. "I think he was planning something far worse. We need to figure out who he was working with." Their investigation uncovered a series of emails between Jack and an unknown associate, filled with cryptic references to plans and payments. The correspondence hinted at a sinister plot far beyond what they'd initially suspected. "We need to take this to the police," Rachel said firmly, her resolve unwavering. When they presented their findings to the authorities, the police were astonished by the depth of evidence. Meanwhile, at the hospital, the weight of recent events hung heavily in the quiet halls. The distant hum of medical equipment and the soft murmur of nurses on their rounds were the only sounds breaking the stillness. Rachel lay in her hospital bed, her recovery slow but steady. She drifted in and out of sleep, her dreams haunted by shadows and whispers of betrayal. Phoebe, ever watchful, sensed that something wasn't right. Over the past few days, she had noticed unfamiliar faces loitering near Rachel's room, raising her suspicions. That evening, as Phoebe sat in the waiting area sipping lukewarm coffee, she noticed a man dressed in hospital scrubs walking toward Rachel's room. Something about him felt off. His movements were hesitant, his demeanor uneasy. Phoebe stood, following him casually to avoid drawing attention. The man paused outside Rachel's door, glancing nervously down the corridor before slipping inside. Phoebe's heart pounded as she quickened her pace, reaching the door just as it closed. Pressing her ear against the door, she heard muffled movements and a faint gasp. Without hesitation, Phoebe burst into the room. Inside, the man was holding a pillow over Rachel's face, attempting to smother her. Rachel's hands weakly clawed at the pillow, her muffled cries barely audible. "Get away from her," Phoebe shouted, adrenaline fueling her actions as she rushed at the man. He turned, startled by her sudden entrance. For a split second, he hesitated, and Phoebe seized the moment, grabbing the pillow and yanking it away from Rachel's face. Rachel gasped, her chest heaving as she gulped in air, her eyes wild with fear. The man shoved Phoebe aside, trying to regain control, but Phoebe was relentless. "Help! Security!" she screamed, her voice echoing down the hallway. Within moments, the door burst open, and hospital security stormed in. They tackled the attacker to the ground, restraining him as he struggled and yelled, "Let me go!" Ignoring his protests, the guards held him firmly. Phoebe rushed to Rachel's side, checking her vitals. Rachel stirred, her eyes fluttering open, relief mingling with exhaustion on her face. "You're safe now?" Phoebe whispered, her voice steady despite the chaos. Phoebe gently checked Rachel's vitals as her friend stirred, her eyes slowly fluttering open. "Phoebe, what happened?" Rachel whispered, her voice weak. "You're safe now?" Phoebe reassured her, squeezing Rachel's hand. "He won't hurt you anymore." The security guards hauled the man to his feet, his wrists secured with handcuffs. One of the guards looked at Phoebe. "We're taking him to the police station. They'll want to question him immediately." "Thank you," Phoebe said, relief evident in her voice. "Make sure they know everything." As the man was dragged away, Phoebe couldn't shake a deep sense of foreboding. Whoever had sent him was still out there, and they wouldn't stop until Rachel was silenced. She knew she needed to remain vigilant. At the police station, the interrogation room was dimly lit, the air thick with tension. The man sat at a cold metal table, defiance etched into his face despite his predicament. Detective Ramirez, a seasoned officer known for his no-nonsense approach, stood outside the room, processing the details of the case. The revelation that Rachel's own sister had orchestrated the attempt on her life left Ramirez unsettled. It was a betrayal so profound that it stirred even his hardened perspective. Taking a deep breath, he entered the room, his expression unreadable as he faced the captured attacker. "Start from the beginning," Ramirez ordered, his voice steady. "How did she contact you?" The man's eyes flicked to the one-way mirror before settling back on Ramirez. "She found me through a mutual contact," he said. "Told me she needed a job done. No questions asked. Paid well too." Ramirez leaned forward, his piercing gaze unrelenting. "And you didn't think twice about killing someone?" The man shrugged nonchalantly. "Money is money." She seemed desperate but convincing. "What did she tell you about her sister?" Ramirez pressed. "Not much," the man admitted. "Just that Rachel needed to be out of the way. Said it was about family and inheritance. I didn't ask for details." Ramirez watched the man's body language carefully, searching for any signs of deceit. Satisfied, he continued. "Tell me about the payment. How did she transfer the money?" "Mostly cash," the man said, shifting slightly in his chair. "But there were some wire transfers. Different accounts, all untraceable. She knew what she was doing." Ramirez nodded and stepped out of the room to confer with his team. "Get the financial records and trace those transfers," he instructed. "We need to tie them back to Rachel's sister." As his officers moved to comply, Ramirez felt a mix of anger and determination. The betrayal ran deeper than he had imagined. Rachel's sister, Monica, had conspired with Jack in a web of greed and jealousy to target her own sibling. Hours later, Monica was brought into the station. She was calm, almost unnervingly serene, as officers led her into the interrogation room. Behind her composed demeanor, Ramirez could see the malice lurking in her eyes. Sitting across from her, he felt the unspoken tension crackling in the air. "Monica," Ramirez began, his tone firm. "Do you know why you're here?" Monica offered a cold smile. "I assume it has something to do with my sister, doesn't it?" "That's correct," Ramirez said, his voice steady. "We know you hired someone to kill her." Monica's smile faltered, but she quickly regained her composure. "I don't know what you're talking about." Ramirez leaned forward, his gaze piercing. "We have your hired man in custody. He's confessed to everything. We also have the financial records and wire transfers. It's over, Monica." For a moment, Monica said nothing, her eyes narrowing as she processed the situation. Then she laughed. A harsh, bitter sound. "So what now? Do you expect me to cry? To beg for mercy?" Ramirez remained calm. "I expect you to tell the truth. Why did you do it?" Monica's expression hardened. "Why? Because Rachel always had everything. The money, the attention, everything. And Jack was supposed to be mine, but she took him too." Ramirez's eyes narrowed. Jack was part of this? A dangerous gleam appeared in Monica's eyes. Of course. He wanted the money just as much as I did. We planned it together, but he was too weak to see it through. Ramirez suppressed a surge of anger, keeping his voice controlled. You conspired to kill your own sister for money and a man? Monica's gaze was unwavering, her tone cold. You wouldn't understand. You've never been in my shoes, Monica said coldly, her voice tinged with bitterness. Detective Ramirez stood firm, his gaze steady. You're right. I don't understand, he replied, his tone resolute. And I hope I never do. As Monica was led away in handcuffs, her defiance remained etched on her face. Ramirez watched her disappear down the hall, a sense of justice mingled with the sobering reality of human betrayal settling over him. He let out a quiet sigh and made his way back to Rachel's hospital room, where Phoebe was seated at her bedside, keeping watch. Rachel looked up as he entered, her eyes brimming with unspoken questions. What did you find out? She asked softly. Ramirez sat down beside her, his voice gentle but direct. Your sister was behind it, he said. She confessed to everything. Rachel's face crumpled, tears spilling down her cheeks as her body shook with quiet sobs. How could she do this? She whispered, her voice cracking under the weight of the revelation. Phoebe reached out and took Rachel's hand, her own eyes glistening with emotion. We'll get through this, she said softly. Together. The courtroom buzzed with a low murmur of anticipation, tension thick in the air. The dark wood-paneled walls seemed to absorb the whispers of those gathered, creating an almost suffocating silence. At the front of the room, the judge's bench loomed as a stark symbol of justice. Jack sat at the defendant's table, his posture rigid. His expression alternated between forced composure and barely concealed defiance. His lawyer leaned in, whispering urgently, but Jack's eyes were locked on the courtroom doors, waiting for the inevitable appearance of Rachel. When Rachel entered, the room seemed to shift. Her posture was straight, her face a mix of quiet strength and lingering vulnerability. She walked to the witness stand, pausing briefly to meet Jack's gaze. The pain and betrayal in her eyes were undeniable, but so was her determination. The judge called the court to order, and the prosecutor stepped forward to begin. Your Honor, we will present evidence that the defendant, Jack Anderson, deliberately poisoned his wife, Rachel Anderson, with the intent to claim her life insurance policy. Turning to the jury, the prosecutor continued. We will show that his actions were premeditated and that he acted with full knowledge and intent. Jack's lawyer stood next, his tone calm but firm. Your Honor, my client maintains his innocence. We urge the court to consider all evidence and circumstances before passing judgment. The prosecutor wasted no time, calling their first witness, a forensic expert. The expert testified that toxicology reports confirmed the presence of poison in Rachel's system, consistent with the substance found in her drink. The evidence was damning, but the most shocking moment came when Monica, Rachel's sister, took the stand. Monica's face was pale and drawn, her usual composure replaced with visible strain. She had agreed to testify in exchange for a reduced sentence. Her voice was barely above a whisper as she admitted. Jack and I planned to kill Rachel for her life insurance. It was all about the money. The courtroom erupted in gasps, and Jack shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his lawyer gesturing for him to remain silent. Monica's testimony, combined with the forensic evidence, painted a devastatingly clear picture. The prosecutor pressed further. Did Jack ever discuss his relationship with Rachel? Were there any signs of tension or marital discord? Monica hesitated for a moment, then nodded. He believed she was unfaithful. He said he saw her meet a man at a cafe and assumed they were having an affair. That's when he started turning to me. A ripple of shocked murmurs spread through the courtroom, the betrayal cutting deeper with every word Monica spoke. Rachel sat in stunned silence, her hands trembling as the weight of her sister's confession and Jack's betrayal crashed over her like a wave. Gasps rippled through the courtroom as Rachel's knuckles turned white, gripping the edge of the witness stand to keep her composure. Her emotions teetered on the brink of spilling over as the weight of Jack and Monica's betrayal bore down on her. When it was Jack's turn to speak, he stood, facing the judge with a mix of arrogance and desperation. I thought Rachel was cheating on me, he began, his voice shaking slightly. I saw her with a man at a cafe. I was angry, hurt. That's why I turned to Monica. But I never wanted Rachel dead. That was all Monica's doing. The prosecutor's eyes narrowed as they pressed further. So, you admit to poisoning her? Jack hesitated, swallowing hard. Yes, I did it, he confessed, his voice breaking. But it was only to scare her, to make her see what she was doing to me. I didn't know Monica would take it further. Rachel, unable to remain silent, rose from her seat. Her voice trembled with both anger and sadness, yet it rang clear in the courtroom. "The man you saw me with was a doctor, Jack," she said, her gaze piercing. "I was pregnant with your child. I wanted to surprise you, to share the news that night. But instead, you tried to kill me." Jack's face crumpled as the truth of her words hit him like a tidal wave. Tears streamed down his face, his voice breaking as he sobbed, I didn't know. The courtroom fell into a stunned silence as Rachel continued, her voice cracking under the strain of her grief. "I lost our baby because of you. Because of your jealousy and your affair with my sister. You almost killed me, Jack. And you did kill our child." Jack collapsed into his chair, his body shaking with uncontrollable sobs. The judge called for order, the tension in the room almost unbearable. The jury sat frozen, their expressions a mix of shock and empathy. Finally, the judge spoke, his voice firm and resolute. "Jack Anderson, you have been found guilty of attempted murder and conspiracy to commit murder. Your actions, driven by greed and jealousy, have led to tragic consequences. This court sentences you to life in prison without the possibility of parole." The verdict hung heavy in the air as the courtroom erupted into hushed whispers. Rachel remained standing, her shoulders squared, her eyes meeting Jack's one last time. The man she had once loved was now a broken shadow of himself, destroyed by his own actions. As Jack was led away, he glanced back at Rachel, his eyes filled with regret. "I'm sorry," he mouthed silently. But Rachel turned away, refusing to let his remorse weaken her resolve. She had survived, and she would continue to fight, for herself and for the memory of the child she lost. Outside the courthouse, Phoebe waited, her face lighting up with relief as Rachel approached. The weight of the trial was slowly lifting from Rachel's shoulders. "It's over," Rachel said, her voice a mixture of exhaustion and sorrow. Phoebe pulled her into a warm embrace, her own tears glistening. "You've been so strong, Rachel. It's time to heal now." Rachel nodded, her resolve unshaken. "Yes. It's time to heal. And to rebuild." Together, they walked away from the courthouse, leaving behind the shadows of betrayal and stepping toward a future shaped by resilience and truth. The days following the trial were a mixture of relief and lingering sadness. Rachel's strength had been tested to its limits, and though she had emerged victorious, the emotional scars remained. Through it all, Phoebe stayed by her side, their bond growing stronger with each passing day. One quiet afternoon, they sat together in Rachel's modest living room, sunlight streaming through the windows and casting a warm glow. The peaceful atmosphere was a stark contrast to the chaos they had endured. "Phoebe," Rachel began hesitantly, her voice soft. "There's something I've been meaning to ask you." Phoebe looked up from the book she was reading, curiosity in her eyes. "What is it?" Rachel hesitated, then took a deep breath. "Why did you, a doctor, decide to work as a cleaner? I've always wondered but never dared to ask." Phoebe's expression softened, a shadow of sadness flickering across her face. She closed her book and set it aside. "It's a long story," she said quietly. "But I think it's time you knew." Rachel leaned forward, her full attention on Phoebe. "I'm here to listen." Phoebe's gaze grew distant as she began to speak. "I used to be a doctor at the very hospital where you were treated," she said, her voice tinged with emotion. "I loved my job. The thrill of saving lives, the satisfaction of helping people. But then, things changed." Rachel's brow furrowed with concern. "What happened?" Phoebe looked down for a moment, gathering her thoughts. "There was a little girl," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "She was only 5 years old, suffering from congenital kidney failure. She was a fighter," Phoebe began, her voice trembling slightly. "She waited so long for a kidney donor, and finally, a match was found. It felt like a miracle, or so I thought." Rachel watched Phoebe intently, sensing the deep pain behind her words. Phoebe's voice grew bitter. "But then a wealthy family came along. Their son needed a kidney too, and they offered the hospital a substantial sum of money. The administration, driven by greed, prioritized the transplant for the boy, completely disregarding the little girl who had been waiting for so long." Rachel's eyes widened in shock. "That's horrible. How could they do something like that?" Phoebe's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I fought against it, but I was just one voice in a powerful system. The little girl. She didn't make it. She died waiting for that kidney. I couldn't bear the injustice. It felt like I was part of something corrupt, something that went against everything I stood for." Rachel reached out, placing her hand over Phoebe's. "I'm so sorry, Phoebe. That must have been so incredibly hard for you. Phoebe nodded, her grip on Rachel's hand tightening. It was. I couldn't stay there anymore. I left, looking for peace, for something honest. Cleaning was simple, unpretentious. It let me stay invisible, away from the horrors of that world. Rachel's heart ached for her friend. You've done so much for me, Phoebe. You're not invisible to me. You're my hero. The months following the trial were a whirlwind of healing and transformation for both women. Rachel and Phoebe channeled their pain and anger into something meaningful, driven by a shared sense of purpose. Though the scars of betrayal remained, they became a testament to their resilience. One sunny afternoon, Rachel and Phoebe sat in their newly established office, the headquarters of their charitable foundation, Hope for Tomorrow. The walls were adorned with photos of smiling children and letters of gratitude from families they had helped. Rachel looked around, her heart swelling with pride. Can you believe how far we've come? She asked, her voice full of awe. Phoebe smiled warmly, her eyes glistening with pride. It's incredible, Rachel. We've turned our darkest moments into something that brings light to others. That's something to be proud of. Rachel nodded, her thoughts drifting back. Do you remember the night we decided to start this foundation? Phoebe chuckled softly. How could I forget? We were sitting in your living room, trying to figure out how we could make a difference. And now, here we are. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Sarah, their program coordinator. She walked in with a bright smile and a stack of papers. We just received another round of thank you letters from the families, she said, handing them over. Rachel and Phoebe each took a letter, their expressions softening as they read the heartfelt words. One letter in particular caught Rachel's attention. It was from a young girl named Emily, who had received a scholarship from their foundation to pursue her education. Dear Rachel and Phoebe, the letter began. Thank you for believing in me. Because of your support, I can go to school and follow my dreams. You've changed my life. Rachel felt a lump in her throat as she read Emily's words. She looked at Phoebe, her eyes shimmering with emotion. This is why we do it, Phoebe. For kids like Emily. Phoebe nodded, her voice thick with emotion. Every child deserves a chance. And we're giving them that chance. Their conversation was interrupted by a knock on the door. Detective Ramirez stepped into the room, his presence a solemn reminder of the challenges they had faced. But as he looked around the office, he couldn't help but smile. You've built something remarkable here, he said. Rachel and Phoebe exchanged a glance, their determination shining through. We couldn't have done it without people like you, Rachel said softly. Ramirez nodded. You've turned tragedy into hope. That's no small thing. As they shared a quiet moment, the warmth of their accomplishments surrounded them, a beacon of light for the future they were building, together. Hello, ladies, Ramirez greeted with a warm smile as he entered the office. I hope I'm not interrupting. Not at all, Rachel said, standing to greet him. What brings you here? Ramirez's smile widened. I wanted to check in on how you're both doing and to thank you for your work. You've come such a long way. Phoebe gestured to a chair. It's good to see you, Detective. We've been busy, but it's been worth it. Ramirez settled into the seat, glancing around the room at the photos and letters adorning the walls. What you've built here is remarkable. It's inspiring. Rachel and Phoebe exchanged a look, their bond evident in the silent exchange. Thank you, Detective, Rachel said sincerely. We couldn't have done it without your support. Ramirez leaned forward, his expression turning serious. I have some news. Jack's appeal was denied. He'll be serving his full sentence. Rachel's heart tightened at the mention of Jack, but she nodded firmly. It's for the best. Justice needs to be served. Ramirez's gaze softened. You've shown incredible strength, Rachel. And you too, Phoebe. What you've done here is a testament to your resilience. Phoebe's voice was steady, her eyes filled with quiet resolve. We needed to find a way to turn our pain into something meaningful. Helping these children gives us purpose. As they spoke, the sound of laughter filled the room as a group of children entered the office. They were part of the Foundation's summer program, and their energy and joy were a vivid reminder of the impact Rachel and Phoebe were making. A shy, wide-eyed girl approached Rachel, her voice soft but determined. Miss Rachel, thank you for helping us. I want to be a doctor when I grow up, just like Miss Phoebe. Rachel knelt down to the girl's level, her heart swelling with pride. You can be anything you want to be, sweetheart, just keep believing in yourself. The girl's face lit up with a radiant smile. I will, she promised. I'll make you proud. Rachel and Phoebe watched as the children explored the office, their laughter echoing around them. It was a moment of fulfillment, a testament to how far they had come. Ramirez stood, preparing to leave. "I'll let you get back to your work. It's clear you have many more lives to change." Rachel shook his hand, gratitude shining in her eyes. "Thank you, Detective, for everything." Phoebe nodded in agreement. "Yes, thank you. For believing in us?" Ramirez gave them a respectful nod. "Take care of yourselves, and keep making a difference." As he left, Rachel turned to Phoebe, her heart full. "We've done something incredible, Phoebe. We've created a legacy." Phoebe smiled, her eyes reflecting the same pride and hope. "And it's only the beginning, Rachel. There's so much more to do." Together, they moved to the window, watching the children play in the courtyard below. Their journey had been filled with heartache and challenges, but they had emerged stronger, their bond unbreakable. With renewed determination, they returned to their work, knowing their efforts were shaping lives and building a brighter future. Their foundation was more than just a charity, it was a living testament to resilience, courage, and unyielding hope. As they continued their mission, they knew their story was one of triumph over adversity, a beacon of inspiration for generations to come.